When news breaks that Pakistan has signed a multi-billion-dollar defense deal with Libya, the first instinct for many observers is to downplay it. Libya is unstable, Libya is far, Libya is complex. But geopolitics is not driven by comfort or neatness. It's driven by momentum, timing, and opportunity. Every time a country chooses to buy a fighter aircraft, it is not just choosing hardware, it's choosing doctrine, training philosophy, maintenance dependency, weapons compatibility, and long term strategic alignment. This is why the Libya Pakistan deal matters far more than its geography suggests. It signals that Pakistan has quietly crossed a threshold. From being a defense consumer, it is now a credible defense exporter operating in contested geopolitical space. Today, we will discuss this deal in detail. My name is Qasim, and you're watching Radar Mode on Pakistan Connect. Today, we're going to unpack a story that sits at the intersection of military capability, industrial maturity, and geopolitical timing. We will examine Pakistan's reported $4 to $4.6 billion defense deal with Libya, the platforms involved, the growing international acceptance of the JF-17 Thunder Block 3, and why legacy aircraft like India's Sepicat Jaguar increasingly look like relics in a modern network-centric battlefield. More importantly, we will explore what all of this tells us about where Pakistan's defense industry is headed and why this trajectory is beginning to matter far beyond South Asia. At the center of Pakistan's defense exports today is the JF-17 Block 3, a fighter aircraft that represents a very deliberate design philosophy. The Block 3 variant is equipped with an active electronically scanned array radar, or the ASA radar, compatible of tracking multiple aerial targets simultaneously while maintaining resistance to jamming. This radar allows the aircraft to operate effectively in beyond visual range or BVR combat, engaging adversaries before being detected. The aircraft also integrates a modern electronics warfare suite, including radar warning receivers, electronic countermeasures, and compatibility with external jamming pods, allowing it to survive and operate in contested electromagnetic environments. And that's not it. The cockpit reflects fourth generation plus thinking, 4.5 Gen plus, with a wide area display, helmet mounted display, and sight, and full sensor fusion that allows pilots to manage information rather than chase it. The JF-17 Block 3 Thunder is designed to carry a full combat load, typically exceeding 4 tons of ordnance, while retaining operational range and agility. It supports BVR missiles within visual range of boresight missiles, precision-guided munitions, and standoff weapons. Crucially, it is fully integrated into Pakistan's network-centric warfare architecture, meaning that it shares real-time data with airborne early warning aircraft, ground-based radars, and other fighters. In modern air warfare, this connectivity often matters more than raw aerodynamic performance, something that analysts tend to oversee. The JF-17's international acceptance reflects this practicality. More than 50 aircraft have been ordered by foreign air forces, with Nigeria, Myanmar, and Azerbaijan already operating these platforms. These countries were not shopping for prestige aircraft, not for stars. They were shopping for fighters they could afford to fly, maintain, upgrade, and fight with over decades. The JF-17's appeal lies in its balance of cost, capability, and political reliability. It does not come with Western end-user restrictions, nor does it suffer from the supply chain uncertainty that has increasingly affected Russian platforms, or the US platforms for that matter. Alongside the JF-17 sits the Super Mashak, an aircraft that I've had the pleasure of flying myself, Pakistan's primary basic trainer and one of the most quietly successful aircraft in the country's defense export portfolio. The Super Mashak is a turboprop trainer based off a Saab Safari. It is designed for basic and intermediate flight training, with a strong airframe, very forgiving flight characteristics, and low operating costs. It has been exported to more than a dozen countries across Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Its success matters because air forces are built from training pipelines outward. A country that starts with Pakistani trainers often ends up with adopting Pakistani doctrine, instructors, and long-term support relationships. Together, the JF-17 and Super Mashak represent a complete air power ladder from the first flight all the way to combat deployment. Pakistan's defense relationship with Libya is not new. During earlier decades, Pakistani military professionals were involved in training and advisory roles within the Libyan armed forces, particularly in Air Force instruction and military education. This historical familiarity laid the groundwork for renewed engagement when Libya began seeking partners capable of rebuilding operational capacity rather than delivering symbolic hardware. According to Reuters, Pakistan has finalized a defense deal valued between 4 and 4.6 billion US dollars with the Libyan National Army spread over approximately 2.5 years. The agreement reportedly includes 16 JF-17 fighter aircraft and 12 Super Mashak trainers, along with equipment covering land, sea, and air domains. Beyond hardware, the deal encompasses training programs, maintenance support, and the broader defense cooperation. The agreement followed a meeting in Benghazi between Pakistan's Chief Army Staff, Field Marshal Asim Munir, and Saddam Khalifa Haftar, Deputy Commander of the Libyan National Army. Libya remains under a United Nations trade embargo imposed in 2011. But multiple UN expert panels have acknowledged that the embargo has been largely ineffective, with foreign military assistance flowing to multiple factions. Pakistani officials have stated that agreement does not violate any international law, noting the absence of sanctions on Haftar and pointing out that other states continue similar engagements. What makes this deal significant is not just its size, but also its symbolism. Pakistan is now operating confidently in a complex geopolitical environment where Western suppliers hesitate and Russian capabilities are stretched thin because of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Now, why is Pakistan such an attractive defense supplier? Good question. Pakistan's growing appeal as a defense exporter rests on three pillars. The first is operational credibility. Pakistan Armed Forces, particularly its Air Force, operating under high-pressure conditions against a peer adversary 5 times larger. This experience informs training, doctrine, and systems integration in ways that purely peacetime forces just cannot replicate. The second pillar is completeness. Pakistan does not sell isolated platforms. It sells aircraft along with pilot training, ground crew instruction maintenance ecosystems, and upgrade pathways. This reduces risk for buyers who lack the industrial base to sustain complex weapon systems independently. The third pillar is political flexibility. Pakistan does not demand strategic alignment, permanent basing, or ideological loyalty. For countries navigating multipolar competition, this neutrality is often more valuable than just raw capability. This combination explains why Pakistan's defense exports now include not only aircraft, but also naval patrol vessels, small arms, ammunition, and even overhaul services. The Libya deal fits neatly into this expanding portfolio. Now, last month, India sealed a deal with a Middle Eastern country to engage and acquire about 20 Sepacat Jaguars. I really thought that I wouldn't have to talk about this again, but India just does not want to phase these relics, these dinosaurs out. So I have to talk about it again. India continues to operate roughly 115 Sepacat Jaguars across 6 squadrons, despite the aircraft entering service in the late 1970s, that's 50 years ago. Designed for low-level penetration and conventional strike roles during the Cold War, the Jaguar's underlying assumptions no longer hold, which means it is just no longer relevant to modern air warfare. It was designed as a deep penetration, low altitude aircraft. These were the days when the radars were not strong enough, radar coverage was less, and these aircraft could go deep into enemy territory and drop their ordnance and come back. That's 50 years ago. Modern air defense systems, persistent radar coverage, and beyond visual range combat have fundamentally altered the modern battle space. India's decision to acquire more than 20 retired Jaguars from Oman, primarily for spare parts, because the company that used to make these things just does not exist. And there's barely any Jaguars being operated around the world, apart from India's 6 squadrons. Now you have to understand that this is a problem for the IAF. Acquiring these Sepacat Jaguars, retired ones from Oman, primarily for spare parts, illustrates the platform's declining viability. But it seems like they're going to push off these aircraft for another 10 years. Even more concerning are the aircraft's engine issues. The Adore engines powering India's Jaguars suffer from age-related wear, maintenance challenges, and declining thrust margins. To ensure safety, many of these engines operate at a derated state, meaning that they cannot produce the full rated thrust. This directly affects the aircraft's ability to take off with maximum fuel and weapons loadout, particularly from hot and high airfields. For the most part, they're just not doing that. The Jaguars that are taking off are either very ranged and with very reduced weapons loadout. In practical terms, this means Jaguars often face trade-offs between range and payload. In an era where aircraft are expected to carry standoff weapons, electronic warfare pods, extended fuel loads, these limitations are really severe. And Jaguar also lacks integrated sensor fusion and any robust data linking, making it ill-suited for network-centric warfare. Against modern fighters operating with airborne early warning support and coordinated targeting, the Jaguar is just outdated. It is operationally vulnerable, which causes a serious threat to the jet itself and the pilot flying. If you look at the history of Jaguar crashes, the Indian Air Force lost around 2 to 3 pilots just last year in horrible crashes. So sad. The contrast between India and Pakistan is not simply about aircraft types. It's about philosophy. India has focused on preserving these legacy platforms to maintain squadron numbers, often postponing deeper structural reform. The MRCA, the AMCA never got beyond the threat stage. By integrating fighters, sensors, and command and control into a unified network, Pakistan increases the effectiveness of each of its aircraft that it fields. A JF-17 Block 3 operating within its network is not an isolated shooter. It is a sensor, a communicator, and a contributor to a shared operational picture. This approach allows Pakistan to generate combat power disproportionate to fleet size. It also makes Pakistani platforms more attractive to export customers who seek survivability and relevance rather than sheer numbers. The success of the JF-17 and the Super Mashak reflects this logic. Pakistan's defense industry is no longer reactive. It is anticipatory, designing systems for the realities of modern warfare rather than the comfort of past doctrine. Beyond Libya, Pakistan has quietly expanded defense engagement with Bangladesh through training initiatives, technical exchanges, and strategic dialogue. While details still remain under the radar, the trajectory suggests deeper cooperation ahead. In a region where alignments are shifting and traditional assumptions are being questioned, Pakistan's ability to engage constructively with multiple partners positions it as a stabilizing and credible defense actor. This relationship and its broader implications will be examined in a dedicated future episode. The Pakistan-Libya defense deal is not an anomaly. It is the product of long-term investment in indigenous capability, operational experience, and strategic patience. The international acceptance of the JF-17, the sustained success of the Super Mashak, and the contrast with aging legacy platforms elsewhere all point to the larger truth. Pakistan's defense industry has matured into a provider of modern, network-ready military solutions. While some nations struggle to extend the relevance of Cold War-era systems, Pakistan is exporting platforms designed for demands of the 21st century warfare. That difference will shape regional and extra-regional military balances in decades to come. If you found this analysis valuable, it is because Radar Mode exists to go deeper than headlines and louder than the propaganda. This channel grows through your questions, your debates, and your curiosity. So please, share this episode with someone who still thinks that defense power is more than just about shiny jets and big numbers. Subscribe and comment with the topics you want dissected next, because the next story is already unfolding. I'm Qasim, and this was Radar Mode on Pakistan Connect. We'll meet again where strategy meets reality. Until then, stay alert, stay informed, and keep your Radar Mode on. I'll see you next week.